So, yeah, I want to be talking about my role working with the young people, how we work with, listen to, and learn from them. And we work with young people in two very specific ways. We've got our core YPAG, Young Persons Advisory Group, and we've been working with them since May of 2023. And they're young people that are based all over the UK, from as far north as Newcastle and as far south as Southampton. And we engage with them in two specific ways. The first way is in monthly 2-hour online meetings. And the second way is through our Living Lab workshops, which happen twice a year roughly. And they're 2-day face-to-face workshops that are dealing with some of the methodological questions that Create pose. The second way in which we work with our young people are in the regional workshops, and these are day off workshops with probably just one-off participation with young people. We've hosted these workshops a couple of times in Cornwall, in St Austell, and at the Central School of Speech and Drama in London. What's been really quite lovely is that we have had young people that have attended a couple of the regional day-long workshops, and some of those participants have also moved over into our YPAG as well, which I sort of think is testament to how important they think the work is that Create's doing. But ultimately, this project wouldn't exist without the young people and the relationships that we've built with them to help look at some of the questions that Create is looking at. When I was reflecting on putting this presentation together, I had these three headings of listening, learning and working. And I thought, if I was thinking about whether there were some of the key learnings that I wanted to talk about, whether they sat specifically under each of these headings, and I realised they don't. It's just not possible. The listening, learning and working with our young people is all very interchangeable and is happening simultaneously or concurrently, but it's always changing, but it's all happening probably all of the time. But there are three key areas that I do want to talk about today. The first one is living informed consent, and this is essentially where we adhere to a practice where all engagement by the young people, and also by any staff that engage with the project, all engagement is an invitation where participants can share as much or as little as they want, and we reiterate this with them all the time. This could be at the beginning of the workshop day, beginning of an activity, or even midway through an activity. And there's no discussion or permission needed. They've also got total autonomy to choose whether they want to be in this space or not. And this is where we use a calm space, and it comes in very, very useful. So a calm space is a designated space with fidget toys and tools where a young person can go and can decompress or time out. And young people don't need to ask to use it. They can come and go as it suits them. They have that total autonomy. I also have found that it's actually been a useful space for a young person to indirectly ask for support. So if I've noticed that a young person is using it for a prolonged amount of time, I'm able to go and ask them if they want to talk. If they don't want to talk, I just leave them to it. They can stay in that space for as long as they want. I'll just keep them engaged with what's going on within the main space and invite them back into the space as and when they feel ready to rejoin an activity. The other thing is we meet them where they're at. So young people are very, very busy individuals, and they often have a lot going on in their lives, and we can't take their time for granted. And we need to respect that whatever they're able to give the project is enough. So there's no guilt if they can't attend a meeting or if they're unable to deliver an action that they hoped to do. So prior to this role, I was a teacher, and most recently I was a programme manager and safeguarding lead on a youth focused programme called the National Citizen Service Programme. And it's from these experiences that I sort of have delivered my practice and processes as a project manager and youth outreach lead. And so I've always focused on a youth first approach, developing programs and projects that put young people at the heart, and demonstrate this by respecting and valuing their time, and by engaging them in ways that interest them, and in ways that I try and find out what they will get from an engagement. But working on Create has highlighted the importance of balancing the needs of participants with those of the project in meaningful ways. And even when this feels uncomfortable or at odds with the project's objectives. And this has involved significant learning curve in managing our expectations of what youth engagement should look like. And it also meant finding a balance between achieving the project's goals and genuinely providing opportunities for young people to participate in ways that met them where they were in both time and capacity. And so I've just got a case study that I want to share with you. So young person A is a quiet young person under 18, and in the group sessions and online, they don't contribute much verbally, but will share in small groups and or when directly asked. But they do attend the online sessions. At the first Living Lab, which was in June 2023, they remained either in the calm space or they sat away from the group activities. This was unless we were speaking with them or working with them one-on-one. And unfortunately, at that time, we hadn't identified that they needed a full-time support worker to engage in activities, but also we didn't really have the resource to be able to provide that at that time. What we did do is one of the team did work with them sporadically over the workshop to help them integrate into the activities when they were willing to do so. But their disengagement did worry me. I was worried that they might be feeling forced to attend or stay, that we weren't doing enough to help them engage. I was worried that we were in any way negatively affecting their mental health. So about 2/3 of the way into the first day, I called up their parent guardian and I expressed my concerns that the young person seemed disengaged and that I was worried that they were unhappy or uncomfortable. And their parent guardian said something that's just sort of stayed with me ever since. They were like, this young person will vote with their feet. If they don't want to be there, they won't be. They know that they can call me and I'll just come pick them up. So if they're there, they're choosing to be there. This was a big turning point because I realized I don't always need to know and I can't always see why a young person is there. And for me, it's accepting that it's enough just for them to be there without any other agenda. And it's also a strong reminder that when working with groups of young people, to accept that sometimes in the short term, the project might not directly seem to benefit from a participant's engagement or disengagement, but that it's enough that they feel that they're getting something from the project. And we know this in Create because they're choosing to turn up. So just to kind of continue with the case study, this young person, they didn't turn up to the second Living Lab workshop. They did turn up to the third one. Their engagement had improved by about 50%, so demonstrating more confidence. But by the most recent Living Lab, which was in February of this year, the change in them was phenomenal. Their confidence showed in their ability to communicate freely with other members of the YPAG and all the staff. They engaged in all of the activities. And this sort of proved to me that if we can manage and balance our expectations and give as much, if not more than we're asking, and even when there is tension and it's not clear what anyone is getting, that we just need to trust the process and the relationships that we're building, and everybody will eventually win. But the final point, it was already set out in the bid originally when I joined the project that the role of the YPAG was sort of as a means to disseminating the findings of the research. However, when participating in the online meetings with the young people, we would ask them, what do you want to do? And they were really clear in that they wanted to make a difference. And when we were recruiting for the YPAG, we were advertising, join our YPAG, make a difference for adolescent mental health. But where we as a project see making a difference as the kind of long-term, young people aren't necessarily going to see the benefits of the research that we're going to do, our perspective of what making a difference looks like is very different to what a young person perceives as making a difference. And that we realize that for young people, making a difference is a lot more immediate and they see it as a more immediate action-based change. And this is what led into their Not So Alone youth-led social action campaign. And so I'll let them introduce this.
If you were to describe loneliness in 3 words, what 3 words would you use?
I think one of the words that I would use is connections.
Sadness, alone,
Escape. Barrier.
exhaustion,
Uncertainty.
trapped.
So yeah, it's been a long and organic process that's taken time and started as an Instagram campaign, and then it evolved to include a podcast. As I said, our YPAG is spread out all across the UK, so realistically, a face-to-face campaign was going to be unlikely, which is why they decided on an online format. And also, social media is a popular format for young people of their age. So our young people have iterated on and stated on numerous occasions within the workshops and online meetings that they don't see loneliness as being something to eradicate, and recognise that some forms of loneliness are necessary and a normal part of life, which I think ties nicely into what Kimberly was saying earlier on. Their format is that they believe that it can be easier to connect and communicate thoughts, feelings and ideas around loneliness and mental health through art. And so their messaging is simply that there's a community here for you if you need us. So that's the premise of the Not So Alone campaign. Their Instagram account shares art, thoughts and signposting and blogs around the themes of adolescent loneliness and mental health. And the podcast involves the young people either interviewing each other or external organisations, and again discussing themes connected to adolescent loneliness and mental health. But often it's very much connected to the current events that are going on in their lives. And these are things like, at the moment, exam season's happening. They have conversations around some of the big transitions that can be going on in their lives. So going from primary school to high school to university, or leaving university. Things like friendships, the challenges of making friendships. So they've so far got about 6 episodes. And I'm going to show you just a little clip from their current episode.
I think accepting such a big part of it, because you're used to comparing yourself to other people and seeing what other people do and going, oh, they're revising that, and look, they're making those really neat notes and lectures, and that person's so far ahead of me. And I think it's really easy to look at the progress that other people seem to have made, or the way that they seem to have everything organized, and really feel bad about the way you're doing things, or feel like maybe your system isn't as good as theirs, which I think is a normal thing to feel, but it's not true.
So at the moment, we're doing a lot of work in prepping and planning for the Loneliness Awareness Week that's led by Marmalade Trust, and Keir sort of talked about it at the beginning. Yeah, I think for the final words, I want to give them over to Theo, who's part of our YPAG, and he articulated how he sees the arts and the importance of the arts and how they can play in alleviating loneliness for young people. And these are his words.
Loneliness is often dismissed as an individual problem, but in reality, it is a social issue that affects many, particularly teenagers. This weekend sought to be a lifeline to this growing crisis. Through writing, drawing, filmmaking, photography, and other artistic outlets, teens are given a space to express themselves, forge connections, and ultimately combat isolation. I joined the project for my passion for writing and filmmaking, but the weekend was primarily focused on collaging, an art form I've never particularly enjoyed. However, I left the weekend with a newfound appreciation for its liberating nature and an even deeper understanding of the importance of creative expression.
Cool. I mean, you can watch all of these in the podcast and more about this video that Theo's created on the YouTube account that we've got, which there's the link embedded in this presentation. And I think finally, I just want to say that we are going to be talking more about what I've been talking about today, but with members from our YPAG in a webinar that we've got on Tuesday, the 10th of June, again, 12 to 1. So if you want to come along and listen to that, please do. But otherwise, thank you so much for listening today. And if you've got any questions, I'd be happy to listen to them.